Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Secrets for an Inspirational Life. How are you all today? I hope that everyone, wherever you are in the world, is feeling a little joy and a little bit of happiness, and that life has calmed down at least a little bit, but enough to give us that passion for adventure, something that ignites our spirit to keep hoping and to keep living. And that's one of the most difficult things sometimes that we can do because we forget. And we should always try with all our heart and soul to be around those people that are able to ignite that special feeling that are, in essence, our tribe, those people that make us feel good and make us feel alive. And sometimes, God, the universe, whatever you want to say, puts us together with people for a reason, at exactly the right time, exactly the right moment, for them to keep their promise to us and for us to keep our promise to them, to help us along this long road called life. And that's why I'm actually absolutely delighted and honoured completely to have my guest today, which is the ever gracious and wonderful Dan Richardson. Dan is the English actor known for films such as Retribution, Kill Kane, When Life Was Good, and The Harsh Light of Day. That is just to name a few. Dan was also in the very popular Disney hit TV series, The Lodge, which showed across worldwide. He also produces his own films and documentaries. Dan became the patron of the famous Born Free Foundation, which was started by Virginia McKenna, and he is an advocate for animal welfare and a renowned environmentalist. His work is simply incredible. Some of the things that he has done, which you will all, look up afterwards, is amazing. And for me and for many others, he is a real modern day hero in all senses of the word. Beyond Born Free, Dan is also a patron of Voice for Asian Elephant Society and Naturewatch Foundation, as well as an ambassador for the International Aid for the Protection and Welfare of Animals and Remembering Wildlife. Whether it's rescuing abandoned dogs in Romania to rehoming lion cubs in South Africa, Dan is one of the most compassionate voices for animals everywhere. He is also a spokesman for the vegan movement, and that is something that he feels exceptionally passionate about. And today, we are so lucky to have him here. He shares his wonderful story, his effervescent spirit, I have to say, and his beautiful journey. Welcome, Dan.
What an amazing introduction. It's just listening to you is somewhat dreamlike, and I'm very, very flattered and honoured and humbled by your words and your introduction. Thank you. It's absolutely wonderful to be here, and I'm honoured.
I'm honoured. The honour is all mine, really, Dan. And they're just really words from my heart and something that I feel very passionately about. For everything that you do really emanates such glorious compassion and kindness, helping so many beings around the world. It is really a true vocation of someone who really deserves all the honour.
Well, thank you. I mean, I guess from my perspective, it feels like as much of an honour to be doing that, because whatever it may be, just recently I had an encounter with a couple of orphaned mice, and there was the two of them curled up together were the size of a 2 pence.
Oh.
It was the most incredible thing. It was devastating because they came into my life as they were dug up in a garden and separated from their mother, and I had them in my life for 24 hours. And as is unfortunately about 99 times out of 100 is the case in that kind of situation, they were about 4 days old and had a very slim chance of survival, and sadly didn't survive. But it was devastating, and as tiny as they were, I remember when I thought about the impact they had on me and the loss that I felt when they crossed that rainbow bridge. They were giants. They were giants in my life, and I know that I'll meet them again. It just kind of underlines the point that I wanted to make, which is that the honour, the privilege that I feel when I'm helping an animal, whether it is the tiniest, 2-pence sized 2 mice, and or as you say, relocating a lion or whatever else it may be. It's just it feels like such a privilege. It feels like something that you should be paying to do. It's such an honour, such a privilege, rather than well, I suppose you do pay to do it because no one's certainly paying me to do it. But it feels like such a privilege. So to hear you say that the words that you just said, it's quite profound, really, because it just feels like the opposite to me. It feels like I'm the one who's lucky and honoured.
You are, but also we are honoured as mankind and the animal world as well, Dan, because you do so much, which you're going to share with us today. And some of the work that I have looked that you have done, it has really brought tears to my eyes. And there is this glowing sensation in my soul that there are still people out there like yourself who have made it their life's work to help. And that is something that really gives the world another reason to turn. So it's beautiful. It really is beautiful. And I would like to share with the listeners, tell us a little bit, let's go back, tell us a little bit about how this all started with you.
I have to probably attribute it to DNA to a great extent, because you know how it is when you think about childhood memories, and they literally are some of the first thoughts that we're aware of having, or at least the first thoughts we can recollect having. And for me, I can't remember a life, I can't remember a version of me that wasn't always incredibly sensitive to and passionate about animals. And I think I have to attribute that to my dad a lot. I think my dad was, who bless him, he'd be 110 if he was still with us.
Oh, goodness.
He was a very old dad. He was 62 when I was born, and he died when I was 21. He was 83. So, as sad as it wasn't a tragic thing. He had lived a really great and full life, and he was way ahead of his time in the sense that he was very much an animal advocate, quite outspoken as well. And that obviously instilled in my brother and I this great respect for nature and animals and a passion for it. And so he absolutely has to take a lot of the credit. But it also does feel, like I said, it feels like it's even prior to that, it feels like it's something that you just come pre-programmed for, I guess, in some case. And of course, people come pre-programmed for all different types of things. And for me, it just was always animals. I can never remember not feeling incredibly connected to animals and passionate about their well-being.
And it's something that you felt even as a child. Is it something that you knew deep inside that you would always want to do, in a way?
In a way, for sure. I mean, I can't claim to have had that clear vision of this is what I'm going to do. I don't think I ever felt that sense of knowing what I was going to do. Funny enough, until I was in my mid-30s, which is when I started acting, I was in inverted commas, I was normal before that. And I had regular jobs. I worked in IT, I worked for Apple Computer and other wonderful companies like that. I had a fantastic career, I had a fantastic life, and I was always very happy and never even realized anything was lacking particularly, but then I discovered acting, and that was the first time in my life where I actually thought, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do. I was 34, 35 years old already, and I never set foot on an acting set. Never acted or thought about acting a day in my life up until I was living in Vancouver for a couple of years in Canada, and it just happened. I just decided I needed to do something constructive with my time. I always loved movies, so I tried acting lessons, fell in love with it immediately, and knew that was going to be what I'd do. And that was probably the first time I ever had that thing that you hear kids say, "Oh, I always wanted to be whatever," and I never had that, and I certainly didn't have it with a knowing that I would play a part in making the world a better place for animals. But that absolutely grew in me rampantly in later years, and particularly in recent years, where it's become everything to me. It's my absolute priority in life and my purpose in life, and that's it's almost to the point of to the detriment of everything else in my life, because I can't see anything else as being as meaningful or important as the work I'm doing with animals.
It's quite a statement, and it's so noble, because it is very rare. People usually, don't they? They want to do things for themselves, but to be selfless in this act is something that is really incredibly rare. To dedicate one's life to a cause, in effect, it's pretty much really these days, I would say, it's very unheard of, mostly in society, because the world has become, sadly, quite a selfish place. So when somebody like you, Dan, comes along and does this incredible work, it makes people stand up and listen and look, and it holds you in a completely different light, because you have also now this huge responsibility in a way, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm incredibly humbled and grateful for your words, but in reality, and I mean this sincerely, it's not just a sort of a throwaway response to what you said. I genuinely feel that selflessness isn't a motivating force. It's not a factor, because for the simple reason that as I said, because it burns so fiercely in me. Can you imagine feeling that and then not doing it? Can you imagine how rotten that would feel?
That's death whilst alive, I would imagine.
Right? I've never experienced it, because I've never not followed this path. But to not do it would be devastating to me. So in that regard, I'm not saying it's a selfish act, but I certainly benefit. I certainly benefit because there's nothing more rewarding and fulfilling and satisfying to me spiritually, emotionally, and just as a human being. There's nothing means as much to me. So to do anything else would be to my own detriment, and that's a fact. So as much as I could enjoy, for example, I can enjoy being on a film set still, and I still intend to act. I'd like to continue with my acting career, partly because it's cathartic as well, and you do sort of have to immerse yourself in some fairly dark places when you deal with these issues with animal welfare. You do see the worst that humanity has to offer, and you better be fairly adept at self-care because of it. Otherwise, you're not going to be much use to the animals or anyone, or yourself even. But I just feel that it really gets to a point where to not do it, I'd be the victim. I would be the victim of not pursuing this as fully and wholeheartedly as I possibly can. For so many reasons, it just doesn't. I can't imagine it. There's nothing more fulfilling and rewarding to me, and even things like the acting that I just mentioned, it in and of itself, it wouldn't be sufficient if it was just because, even if I was, and let's be absolutely clear, I'm not. But even if I was the most respected, successful actor ever, and I won more Oscars and more awards and more respect from everybody globally than any other actor has ever done, what have I actually achieved or changed? More importantly, what have I changed? How have I made the world a better place? And maybe I have. Maybe in those movies that you've become so famous and popular in, maybe you've helped people through a tough time. Maybe you've inspired people. Of course, that's a possibility, but it's a byproduct. It's an accident. It's an incidental thing rather than the reason you did it. And yet, if I continue acting and I have any success and I grow my platform, that right there is my single best and biggest chance of growing the platform of people who will listen to me when I spread the message that really matters, which is be kind to animals. And of course each other, but you don't find people who are compassionate to animals not being compassionate to humans. Compassion isn't species specific. If people are compassionate, everyone and everything wins.
Yes, absolutely. Because there is that famous saying, isn't there, where, if you want to see the state of a nation, look how they treat their animals.
Right. That was Gandhi, and it's one of my favourite quotes.
Yes.
It's absolutely
I love that,
beautiful.
Don't you?
So it's absolutely wonderful. And recently I've been dealing with some issues in India. Over the last few years, we had a beautiful tigress that was victimized and hunted and killed, labeled a man-eater absolutely unfairly, unjustifiably, by their own definitions, unjustifiably. And it was clearly something that happened with a major agenda being served, and clearly that was money. But long story short, while I was talking to the folks in India whose intent was to hunt down and kill this animal, I thought that the single most powerful thing I was able to offer was the words of their own late great leader, which was Gandhi, which was exactly as you just said. You could, the greatness of a nation and its moral progress can be judged by its treatment of animals.
Yes.
Well, and that's not the Westerner who's just showing up on an Indian news channel and saying, "Hey, you have to be better." That's me saying, "No, this is what your guy told us. This is what he taught me."
Yeah,
and he was your guy, and it's so because I think that's a huge factor. It's not it's that very sort of cliched, swooping in and saving the day kind of thing, which can cause a lot of resentment. That's what Born Free is so good at. They empower other people locally. They don't swoop in and save the day themselves. They empower people locally to invest and benefit from and protect nature and the environment and the animals in it. Same deal with India. So, and it's just interesting that you used that Gandhi quote, because that's one that I often refer to.
I like it. I like it a lot, and I think it really is a true statement. Also, with regards to if I want to know, this is one of my things in life. If I ever want to know what someone is like, I always look at how they treat animals. And if they don't treat animals well, I know, number one, I'm not going to get on with them. It's as simple as that. It really is as simple as that. And that is how they're going to treat humans. So there's a lot to be said for that, because animals in their own right are spiritual beings, and people forget that we somehow have lost the memory of even being compassionate, as we were talking about earlier, to ourselves, let alone to anybody else.
Right. Absolutely. And I agree with you. It's impossible for me to see an animal of any kind. The mice that I described, even we were just talking before we started recording, the privilege I just had of seeing a baby goldfinch on my balcony railing being fed by its mum, and it's just the presence of these incredible little beings, and their life, that is its only life, and it's the most precious thing to them, and it should also be to us. And it's a big conversation, which I'm sure we'll get into. But I'm with you. Animals are all spiritual beings with as much right to be here to peace and freedom and life as we all have.
And in a way, if we want to see, like Gandhi said, the reflection of who we are, we really should look at the state of the animal kingdom, because that is a true reflection, I think, of where mankind is at the moment.
It is, and what better time to reflect on that in the midst of a pandemic, which is, as they call it, zoonotic, meaning it came to humans from animals. And the sad thing is, this is the dangerous thing. Which and when I say sad, I mean it's quite a tragic thing to become aware of, but you need to become aware of it in order to change it. Which is that, as you just said, quite rightly, you can judge where we're at morally, spiritually, compassionately by viewing our relationship with animals, our conduct towards animals, and with the world we live in, the society we grow up in and are conditioned by, does such a good job of normalizing absolute horror.
Yes.
And it does so by hiding it. Of course, it doesn't actually numb us to the horror. It hides the horror. And by making it invisible, it normalizes the things that we take absolutely for granted. And some people just draw the line in different places. That's all that happens. Some people will say, oh no, I absolutely wouldn't go to a circus because, the animals are whipped and they're treated badly and they're left, for hours and kept in cages and transported around. But the same people will go to a zoo thinking that the zoo treats the animals well and that that's any kind of reasonable life for an animal to live, which of course it's not. And then other people will draw the line. They wouldn't go to a circus or a zoo, but they'll happily eat meat. But that's because they don't have to see how the animals are treated, and they'll assume cognitive dissonance is an incredibly powerful thing in this regard. They'll assume that the animals had a fabulous life and that, it just suddenly one day didn't know what was happening and it was over. Now it's on your plate. That's not ever how it works. And from the moment, talking about childhood, from the moment we're alive in this world, somebody's putting something in our mouth before we have any capacity for thought or decision making or choice. Somebody's putting a spoon in our mouth, and that could very well and probably is animal product, dairy at the very least. And so how then are you supposed to get to the age of, let's say, 4, 6, 10, whatever age you might be, when you start to think, hang on, is this right? Should I be exploiting, or should animals be exploited for my benefit for this particular thing that I get to taste? But why in the world would any child ever grow up thinking that when it's absolutely throughout their entire existence what they've been conditioned to think is normal?
Yes, I suppose it comes down to education, doesn't it? Because if people don't know what's going on, then they can't, somehow the choice isn't there in some ways, because they have to be educated to a point. And I know that you are a vegan, Dan, and it's something that you feel very strongly about. How long have you been a practicing vegan now?
Well, that's a really interesting point, and it's why I'm moderate in my attitude towards people, as passionate and as strongly as I do feel about it. You're absolutely right. I'm very moderate in my view towards people, and the answer to your question is I've been a vegan for just under 4 years, and yet within the last 10 years I've been an outspoken advocate for animal welfare and conservation. And so the hypocrisy there was not lost on me. At a certain point, I suddenly became aware that I would literally be standing at a protest in London, speaking on a megaphone, saying, "Please help me save this." Let's say the rhino or the lion or the dolphin or whatever it may be. And then that very same day, I'd have gone to the restaurant and ordered a chicken dinner. And the disconnect is that is apparent in that very statement. The disconnect was so strong in a person who, I was a good guy, I was standing up for animals while eating animals, and that's actually, as I say, one of the reasons why I'm very moderate in my view towards people, because how arrogant and presumptuous would it be for me to then say, well, I got to the age of 44 or whatever I was, 45, finally made this decision, and now you have to make the same decision. You have to come to the same realization, because I did. But it took me 45 years to get there. And so it would be incredibly arrogant and wrong, I think, of me to say, well, everyone has to make the same choice. Now, I'd love them to. Of course I would. I would love them to all come to the same conclusion. And I think people are very rapidly. But I know for a fact that nobody hounding me, nobody pressuring or preaching to me would have swayed me. In fact, it would have probably turned me in the other direction. I did it. The seeds were planted over the course of my life, and at some point, everything came to fruition, and I was like, "Oh, I need to be vegan." Of course, and the strange thing about that, thinking about it and talking about it with you now, is it reminds me of just how profound a shift that was. Instantly, people always talk about the physical. People, when people realize I'm a vegan, and I train at the gym and I try and keep myself in reasonably good shape, and people, generally speaking, people first say, "Well, how do you get your protein?" I mean, that's the classic.
Yeah,
everyone always talks about protein, and I'll answer those questions quite happily. But the most significant, profound, and immediate shift that happened for me was the spiritual, emotional, and conscious shift that happened the moment, not after I'd been eating vegan food for a while, but the moment I decided I was going to be a vegan. Everything changed, and I didn't recognize the previous 45-year version of myself. From that point on, I didn't know.
It was that dramatic.
I didn't. I mean, I don't mean in a negative way in the slightest. I just in an almost, oh my God, well, how did I not do this earlier? And it's almost as if you'd woken up from a dream that was so vivid and real, and then you were out of it, and you were thinking back, and I didn't understand, and I still can't understand. I still can't understand. If I give it any thought, it actually upsets me quite a lot, when I think to myself, over the course of my 45 years before I became vegan, how many animals was I responsible for slaughtering? You know, and that's exactly that's my purpose in life, is to stand against that. And yet I contributed to it for 45 years. And so that's become an incredibly profound moment when I decided to be vegan, and spiritually more than anything else.
But we can, in life, whether that be, for example, being a vegan or whatever else, that we can abstain from. It is a personal journey, and everything comes really in the right moment, because everyone, like every flower is different, every plant is different. We all mature at different times.
Right.
So, where, a rose might mature after, I don't know however many months, and then a daisy would come at a certain point, maybe, 1 month or whatever it is. But the point is that you did, and I think that's the important point here, that whatever the journey was, you did do it, you did flourish.
Yeah, and I think, and again, I'm very grateful for you saying that, and I do feel that, and I certainly don't look back, and I mean, I think it's incredibly self-destructive and pointless to have regrets, really, and that's not. I mean, yes, I wish I had turned that corner earlier, but it's a gift to me in many ways, such as I say, my attitude towards people who haven't. And of course, we're talking about the vast majority who haven't taken that step and may never take that step in this life. And I can't possibly hold those people to account when, as I say, I spent 45 years being a good guy. Absolutely loved, as I said, I just explained to you, from my earliest childhood memories, I've always been sensitive to, deeply passionate for animals and their welfare and well-being. And yet, for 45 years, I hate them. And that didn't mean I didn't care. It meant that I was subjected to an incredibly good example of just how effective the conditioning is that society is subjected to, because it's, as I said, from the moment you're born, you're in a society that normalizes milk, eggs, meat, fish, all of the things that we take for granted, and we never contemplate until we do. But the whole system is designed to hide from us the realities that go into making those products available to us. So yeah, it's a gift to me in the sense that I'm now able to converse with people. I'm not going to just be throwing a tantrum when someone tells me they're a meat eater, because that won't achieve anything. But
no.
I can, I think that's going to get us. Well, I know it's going to get us further than if I did throw a tantrum. If you're harsh with people, human nature alone will ensure that they won't take very seriously what you've got to say.
Well, they won't, and they will have, in a way, like you were saying earlier, an allergy to something, because, in fact, where the journey has taken you, I think possibly, we become more compassionate as individuals because we know our own human frailties. So, when it comes to educating other people to find a better way of living, we are then going to lead by example. And also, some of the greatest teachers have been through some of the most harshest tests in life. So everything in its right moment, I believe.
Yeah, I completely agree. And you've articulated it beautifully there, because and your analogy with the flowers is a good one, because as you say, everyone's on their own path, and myself included. Of course, there's nobody's not included in that statement. Everyone's on their own path, making their journey. And most vegans weren't always vegan, so they've all made that evolution themselves. They've all taken those steps and experienced that journey, that change themselves. There's very few people who've spent their entire life eating vegan, and so I think it's an interesting balance, because obviously, knowing what I know, yes, of course, I wish everyone would go vegan overnight, and we would all stop doing what I know we're doing to animals for essentially our taste buds' sake. And but I know that in reality, that's not going to happen, and you either get to freak out about that, or function and operate as effectively as you possibly can with those constraints and boundaries and realities, and that's what I'm attempting to do.
We can only do what we can, within what we have. And we can only take people to the places that we have been to. So I think there's a lot to be said for that. And patience and compassion for everyone on their journey, wherever they are, whatever they're doing, is really important to find unity amongst us instead of forcing something upon someone. Because as you said, forcing someone or shaming them even isn't going to achieve anything.
It really isn't, and there's a twisted irony in there, which is that I completely understand the passion and the fury. Even there's people who I know, people personally who are absolutely furious with the world in so much as they have made the step to veganism, and they know most people haven't, and they will absolutely fight to the death to turn everybody vegan. And I could show statistical facts that will demonstrate that will have a detrimental impact on their cause that they are so passionate about. This is that twisted irony that I'm talking about. Is that I could even show them that their approach will have a negative effect rather than a positive effect on the very cause that causes their passion and anger and fury in the first place. But most of them wouldn't be able to utilize that information and adapt accordingly. They would still feel so passionate about it and so enraged that people were still eating meat that they would even in possession of those facts that it would have a detrimental effect on most people, that you would turn people away from veganism rather than embrace them and have them accept it.
I truly believe
they would still continue.
Yeah.
It happens all the time. It's changing, though. I have to say, that is changing. You don't see anything like the same extremism as it still exists, of course, but it's nothing like as. And veganism has become mainstream. You can't not notice that. Everyone knows that veganism is one of the most rapidly growing lifestyle choices, and it is a lifestyle choice. It's not a diet. Mm-hmm. It's a lifestyle choice, and it's one of the fastest, if not the fastest growing lifestyle choice in the world. And you can't walk into a restaurant now without them offering you a vegan menu. Yes. At the very least, there's vegan options. But that's all changed in the last 4 or 5 years. Gosh, I mean, wasn't I lucky? Because this is pure coincidence. I just happened to have gone vegan at the best time ever to have gone vegan.
You've got the most choices now, haven't you?
Yeah, it's incredible. The choices are absolutely endless. And the supermarkets all have vegan sections, great vegan options. There's lots of accidentally vegan food. There's transition products for those people who, if they miss a burger, I could serve burgers to people. They wouldn't have a clue it wasn't meat, and it's 100% plant-based. Same with most products. They can do incredible things now, and it's reasonably healthy, and certainly more healthy than meat has been shown to be. But again, that's all part of the conditioning, and it gets borderline preachy if I go into it. But it's been demonstrated over and over again that these things aren't actually healthy at all. The people who tell us that they're healthy are the people who want us to buy meat.
Well, yes. I mean, at the end of the day, unfortunately, as we all know, money is the great motivator in all of this.
Always.
And that's something that I think will probably continue for a long time. The profit, whether, in whatever currency or whatever, it's about greed. Also, I think a lot of it is you can never satisfy people's wants and desires. Their needs, it's very easy what they need, but the wants and desires of the human being are humongous.
Yeah, and incredibly damaging and destructive to everything around us, which is, again, it's kind of a tragic irony, but I often think about the self-proclaimed most intelligent species status that we give ourselves, but you have to ask yourself what level of intelligence would knowingly destroy its own habitat. It's not just its own habitat, but the very planet that sustains our existence, and all for exactly as you described, the wants and needs of human, and the immediate profit-driven wants and needs, not the spiritual growth or the betterment of society, the growing of a bank account or a share price or you name it. It's all, as you quite rightly said, it's all about the money.
It's all about the money. And I had an incident actually last week. I go to see an osteopath, and they've been an osteopath for many years, and they've decided, they're coming to quite a lot of money, and, she decided to give it up. And all that she could talk about that she had given up on all the patients was how much money that she had inherited and how much money she had. And I remember thinking to myself, well, what was the point then of your whole life? Not in a, Dan, not in a judgmental way, but what was the point for the past 40 years of your life if all it was all about was the money? And I had one of those moments where I thought, oh my goodness, it really saddened me. And I was upset for a few days about it because I thought, I actually believed, and maybe that's me with my rose-coloured glasses always, that she loved the work. But it isn't. It was actually to do with the money. And once she'd had enough money, she gave up helping people. And that was sort of a huge, we were talking about slaps. That was a huge slap in my face because I thought, you know what, Mimi? It's not how you think it is, the world. And I always like to believe in the best of people, always, until they prove otherwise. I'm one of those eternal optimists. But I'm also coming to the realization that actually people have become selfish in their lifestyles. So that was quite a shock, really, for me. Do you understand?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I do. And it comes back to that point I made about as much as I enjoy acting, even if I was the best and most successful actor on earth, what have I actually changed? What have I achieved for the betterment of society, the world, mankind, or anything essentially other than myself, my own personal gain and my bank account and my fan base or whatever it may be? And I do tend to think that people realise this. There was unfortunately I won't be able to do this the credit it deserves, but there was an article not too many years ago, a fascinating article that was put out that was related to palliative carers who'd done some research with their patients, and it was a really, really insightful article about the 8 or 10 most commonly conveyed or shared thoughts, feelings, desires, regrets on a person's deathbed.
Oh my goodness!
Absolutely fascinating, and of course, and this is a really strange reality. Of course, if I ask that question, even those people who are profit driven and driven by, as you just described, someone who's driven by the income rather than the service that they're providing. Even those people probably, if you were to ask them the question, what do you think those 8 or 10 things are? They'll come up with things like, I wish I'd seen more of my family. I wish I'd been, given more to society. I wish I'd done more to change things for the better. They wouldn't say, I'll wish I had a bigger house. I'll wish I'd got a better yacht, or made more money, had a bigger bank balance. Everyone knows and can articulate, can totally relate to the fact those things are completely meaningless at the end. You can't take it with you. I mean, it's a cliche. It's so commonly known. But even those people, I think, and I can explain why as well. I think they can't break free from that, and the reason why, it's exactly the same conditioning we've talked about already in regards to food. It's the same conformist expectations that society has on people, and the conventional life that you're supposed to live, in inverted commas, which, as soon as you break free from that, it means you're walking to the beat of a different drum, and if you're not a person who's confident in yourself and really comfortable in your own skin and being yourself authentically, that's the key thing for me, was the authenticity.
Yeah.
If you're not comfortable with that, and a lot of people aren't, and that's how society's designed. You're not supposed to be different. You're supposed to serve the system. You're supposed to be, essentially. It sounds a bit over dramatic. We're producing drones to just carry on perpetuate the system that exists. That's what. As soon as you break away from that, it's for you as a person. It's so liberating. It's so even if you don't make as much money, even if you don't actually get to do anything different with your life, but just knowing it, stepping away from it, it's such a liberating thing. It's so spiritually freeing, and I personally, I'm now surrounded by people, yourself included, Mimi, that I don't think that any of us could go back to that. You can't unknow it. Once you know it, you can't unknow it.
You can't. And once you're free, who wants to go back to that prison?
Well, quite. It would be preposterous, wouldn't it? Just to, and I just had this conversation with a friend very recently. I used to earn more. As I said, I used to work in IT. I earned pretty good money, and I certainly wasn't setting the world on fire. But I would have been on a far different trajectory financially and economically speaking. I'm sure had I continued with that. The uncertainty in my life is ever present. I don't know what's coming next. I don't know whether I'll make any money or not. But I have faith that I will. Faith by that I mean for me it's the universe, as you talked beautifully at the beginning about. Whatever it is for you, whether it's God or the universe or however you label it, for me it's the universe. It's this unbelievable infinite source energy that connects people like you and I, for example. And it's never let me down. It's never let me down, and so I've never, and I feel like I'm very lucky in that regard. It comes back again to childhood and nurture and nature and all the things that we know go into creating a person. And I feel like I was very lucky in the sense that it wasn't consciously given to me or articulated specifically, but I came out of childhood into adulthood with a sense of, well, I can do anything I want. And that doesn't mean I've gone and become a Premier League football player or the Olympic gold medalist or anything. I just mean when it came, for example, to quitting by then 15-year-long career in IT to just try it as an actor, there wasn't a moment's hesitation in me. There wasn't something that was thinking, "Oh, yeah, but what if I can't earn the money? What if I can't pay the mortgage? What if?" Because you could spend your whole life saying "what if," and I think most people do, and that's why people don't actually explore, never mind achieve their dreams, they don't even explore them. And Jim Carrey said it. I think it was Jim Carrey anyway. Someone said it beautifully. In fact, I think Jim Carrey said it, but he attributes it to his father, who said, you can fail at something you don't want to do, so you might as well try something you do want to do.
Yes.
And I think that's absolutely beautifully put. And I've seen that happen. I had friends who continued in the IT industry after I left and played by all the rules and absolutely on paper were, supreme in business. And then they got made redundant along with a lot of other people. And for all their efforts and all their loyalty to the business and all their, abiding by the rules, they found themselves out on their ear and then forced into a situation where they either get into a state of desperation or they try what they always wanted to do. And most of them always wanted to do something else. and it's interesting. And I thought the pandemic and the lockdown that resulted would be something that would, and it probably is something that's put a lot of people at a crossroads and has made them reevaluate their life and decide maybe this is the time to try something different, because life is short. It really is.
The blink of an eye.
Yeah.
Literally the blink of an eye. And I was talking to someone the other day, actually, Dan. He was a guest on the podcast, Anthony James Maddox, and he's a trigeminal nerve sufferer. So he had a brain operation, and as a result of that, it has given him literally a new lease of life, but has given him also a lot of problems, physically and with life. He's had to look at his life again, but the courage and the compassion that this whole operation had, and he said he didn't like himself in effect before, but when he had this operation, he became a completely different person. He became, in effect, the person that he really was, which was the real person. He had I think he was a financial advisor, and now he's worldwide he's making documentaries about bullying and all sorts of things. But he said, had that not happened to him, this sort of pivot in his life, he would never have followed his heart's calling. So in a way, like you say, the pandemic, whatever that is in life that happens that gives us that epiphany, it needs to happen. Otherwise, we close our eyes and it's over so quickly.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because on a granular level, when something bad happens, and I say bad in inverted commas, we're very, very good. Humans are very adept at categorizing and labeling and judging situations, everybody's life is littered with examples of this. Never mind human history. Each individual has a life that's absolutely full to the brim of examples of exactly what I'm talking about, which is that a so-called bad thing will happen, and some things really are very unpleasant, and of course there's there's extremes of this. There's different levels of this to which you can apply what I'm about to say. But ultimately, with hindsight, more often than not, or retrospectively looking at a situation, as per the story you just told, that what initially seemed bad, felt awful, you seemed like you're a victim of, set a different trajectory which led to the greatest glories in your life. And therefore, when you look back at it from a different perspective, from that position of having the luxury of being able to join the dots backwards, was that thing bad? Or did it just feel bad at the time? But actually it was exactly that catalyst you needed, as you just described, that sent you on a totally different journey, a different trajectory, and led to the best things you've experienced and the life that you're living now, and the better version of yourself that you prefer to the old version, and so on. And everybody has those examples. And I say that again, just, that's not to be flippant about tragedies and awful things that happen, where you could easily go through life and never know how could that possibly have served me. And there's plenty of examples of that too. But largely, for the most of us, we're living incredibly privileged lives, and we're going through difficult times, and life's just like that. It's a cliche again. It's like a roller coaster, as they say, and I see it as a pendulum, and I like the pendulum analogy for the simple reason that when if you think of a pendulum and the motion of a pendulum, if it was in one half of its range, if it was light, and the other half of its range it was dark, there's only one way it can get up into the light, and that's a good run up in the dark to begin with.
Yes. Yeah.
And vice versa, of course, and that's life. It's just a different way of saying the same thing as a helter-skelter. But with that big pull back and run up in the dark area, is it bad? Is it negative? Are you a victim of it if it's the only way that you can get the momentum and the trajectory into the light?
Yes, it's like, when babies, just before they're born, we are all in the darkness of the womb.
Right.
And in a way, that's our life. We are in some form of darkness, like you say. And unless we know the darkness, how can we ever know the light?
Well, we live in a universe of opposites, and you're absolutely right. How can we know anything without its opposite? How can we know silence without sound, or vice versa?
Yes. And
how can we know light without dark? And it's interesting, when we talked about Gandhi and his amazing quote, one of his many amazing quotes, and I'm reminded with what we're talking about now of Martin Luther King, his beautiful quote about hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that.
Yes.
And he also uses the analogy, darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. And it's that even though we're having this conversation, and I have this conversation a lot in terms of animal conservation, animal welfare, and the darkness that I alluded to, that you by necessity have to immerse yourself into some extent. You can't address a problem if you don't know what it is, and to know the problems of animal conservation and animal welfare, you are going to see some ugliness and some darkness, and but you had better not try to beat it with more darkness. And another great mind and a great quote from Einstein, that nothing can be destroyed using the same energy that was used to create it.
I love that.
Right? And it's just those kinds of phrases and quotes, they really keep me going on the right path, on the straight and narrow. Because it's difficult sometimes to maintain that sense of compassion and kindness and light and love and all the things that we know actually will change things for the good and for the long term. But that's the only way it's going to happen. We have to find a way to maintain those elements of ourselves. And
how do you, Dan, keep the light flickering within?
It's challenging at times, I have to say. And the last couple of years have been the most challenging for various reasons. It's become more apparent that I need to do it, and more important that I do. And as I say that, I'm very conscious of the fact that I'm thereby underlining my own example of what I just talked about. That each of us has those examples of those times that can feel bad, that you can feel like a victim of it, and so on and so on. And I'm very, very much aware of that. And so the way I try to stay light, I guess, for want of a better expression, is meditation. I try to meditate. I immerse myself in nature at every opportunity, because I feel like that's my real haven. That's where I reconnect and ground myself and center myself. And I can be in a very dark place, and just going for a walk in nature. I don't have to do anything in particular or think or do it or say anything. I can just walk into nature, and just be. And that will change everything for me. That can change everything. Music.
What music do you like to listen to?
Well, it's a really. I love it when people ask me that question, because I could probably guarantee that most people wouldn't have. I mean, in fact, I can't even name half the music I listen to. I've got a car where I can push a button and say play epic, emotional, uplifting music, and it will.
That's a very clever car.
It's a very clever car, and it's a gorgeous car, and it's part of my purpose in life. It's an electric car, and it's all part. It has.
Is it all electric, or can you use
100%? Yeah,
100% electric.
Yeah, I felt like I had to do that because vegan leather interior, 100% electric. Again, it's like the whole step I took towards veganism, and then I thought, how can I possibly not have done this before? And the same thing applied with my car. I suddenly thought, what am I doing? How can I can literally drive a tank to an environmental rally? And just the irony and the hypocrisy of that suddenly hit me. I thought, yeah, I've got to go electric. But back to the music, and often, almost all of the music I listen to is instrumental. I have very, very little music that has words. I love the sorts of emotional, soul-stirring music you hear in movies.
Oh, film scores.
Most of my playlists are soundtracks. I love music from, for example, the film Gladiator. I love the music from... God, it's so bizarre. I can't even think of another.
Do you like Ennio Morricone?
I love Ennio Morricone.
Oh, God, I adore him.
Just John Williams. I mean, the late great John Williams, and so many. All kinds of music I love are either from movies or they sound like music that would be in movies, but may not be. And it's just even in the gym, I listen to where I think more often than not people be listening to something a little bit more upbeat and hardcore. I listen to really powerful, emotional, stirring music that just. Just some of it. When I talk about this music, it makes me want to play
playlists with me. You have to send that through to me.
I'd be absolutely delighted.
I'd love to hear that. Have you heard of Kitaro, the Japanese guy? I love him.
Yes, I do too.
Yes, he's amazing.
Yeah, I've absolutely got some of his music on my playlist, and I have. Yeah, it's a fairly eclectic collection of music, but within the confines of instrumental, powerful, uplifting, emotional, very atmospheric. And a lot of the time, funny enough, it's how I see and conceptualize and then subsequently actually write and create movies a lot of the time, is it will actually come from music. So it will start with music that will inspire a scene in my head that will then become a script that I write, and then I'll be and the music can create an awful lot for me in that way, and it back to your original question, can also keep me. I think music can affect our mood greatly and very quickly. So we all have days, myself included, where you wake up feeling anxious or sad or low or whatever it may be. And it's easy, very, very easy. This is the human condition and the ego, where it's very, very easy to spiral down from there. The ego is very attached to those sorts of feelings.
It's a very tricky thing, the ego, isn't it?
It's very tricky. It's very wily. God, it's wily. It's and I don't mean ego in the obvious sense, in terms of like, you know, does my hair look all right? It's ego. I'm talking about the ego that doesn't want you to meditate. They'll try and make you go to sleep, because to meditate is to start to separate from and eventually abandon ego, and the ego knows it, and it doesn't like that. And,
no, because ego likes to be the king, doesn't it?
The ego likes to be in control, and it will do so clever, clever, and part of that cleverness is that when you wake up feeling depressed, it immediately gets its hooks in. And you don't even know it's got its hooks in it. It just makes you sit there thinking you are the one feeling. No, I'm just going to sit here and be miserable because I feel miserable. I'm going to wallow in that. And that's not you. That's your ego. And the real you is in there somewhere. And it's the real you that goes over to the speaker and switches it on, connects to your iPhone, and then starts playing uplifting music and changes your mood, and your ego's going, oh no, what are you doing? Stop it, turn it off. Put something sad on.
Let's be depressed together and wallow in this.
Yeah, misery loves company. The ego doesn't want, it wants to be in control, like you said, and it doesn't want you making your own decisions. And
no, because otherwise then, you know, it's not the king. And
exactly.
One of the funny thing is, I was on a few years ago, me and a friend of mine, we were in Central Asia, and we were traveling, and it was very, very hot, and my ego was not happy. So it made a lot of, you know, noises and said, you know, here are you wanting to be so spiritual. Isn't this lovely? And here we are on the road to Samarkand 19 hours later. But no, and we had this whole conversation, and I was like, just be quiet now. And I knew it was my ego, you know. So we had this whole thing on, and I think actually there's a book called On the Road to Samarkand, which is amazing because a lot of spiritual things happen along the way. And my ego said, so you want to be spiritual, do you? And I said, can you just be quiet? He said, I'm hot. I had this really weird conversation. He said, I'm hot. And I said, yeah, it's fine. We've got air conditioning. No, I'm still hot. I said, can you just be quiet? He said, can I have an ice cream? No, you can't have an ice cream. Just be quiet. We're in the middle of the desert. What are you talking about? So we had this whole thing. And at the end, I said to it, listen, me and you are going to have to come to a deal. And it said, I'm going to die. And I said, well, you are going to die if you don't listen to me. And he said, I'm going to die. We're going to die. What are you doing? You're mad. And I said, listen, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do a deal. You're going to keep quiet for the rest of the journey. When we get there, we can have a lolly or an ice cream or whatever. Yeah. And then just be quiet. And he said, you're lying. And I said, how desperate are you? He said, I'm very desperate. I said, then be quiet. And it was quiet. So by the time we arrived, which was like pitch black, I said, what do you want? He said, I don't want anything now. I said, why don't you want anything? And he said, it's too late. I just want to go to bed.
Yeah, there you go. Well, it's fascinating that you use that kind of language when you talk about it, because I'm sure you're familiar with Eckhart Tolle's work.
Yes. Yeah.
Or Eckhart Tolle. I'm never sure if it's Tolle.
I'm never sure how to say it.
But Eckhart, I think he's reached the status now where we can say Eckhart and everyone knows who we mean.
Yes, like the Queen, for example.
Like the Queen, yeah. Only better. But he talks about exactly that. He talks about you know, don't fight your ego. You should be treating your ego like a toddler.
Yes.
And you just described that beautifully. You were saying when we get there, you can have a lolly. And it does work in that way, and it really doesn't like it when it doesn't get its own way. But you know, also we have to keep in mind that ego can be our friend and is absolutely essential to us.
Oh, it is our friend if we use it correctly.
Used correctly, exactly. It's about using it. It's about knowing how to use it correctly. And I'm not for 1 second suggesting that I do. I'm
neither do I.
But I suspect I'll be learning for my entire life.
Yes.
However long that may be.
Me too.
And I don't imagine for a second you ever reach a point where you suddenly become aware that you know everything.
Mm.
I think that's absolutely not achievable, and anyone who says it should be running the other direction from as fast as possible, I think.
Yes. I don't know anything. I was walking down the road one day. I lived abroad for many, many years, and I was walking down the road one day, and it was one of these moments, that you have in life, and when you're just cheesed off. And I said, oh, you know what? I just don't know anything anymore. I just don't know anything. And then suddenly, when your heart speaks to you, and they said, well, you never knew anything anyway, so what are you talking about? And I thought, well, that's true. Wow, I thought, this is really liberating. I actually don't know anything.
Yeah,
and
it is liberating.
Yes.
It really is liberating. It reminds me of the incredible bridge that's being built between spirituality and the scientific community, which essentially is happening through quantum physics. And quantum physicists seem to be the least arrogant and most humble of all the scientists, because they will all collectively say, very willingly admit that the more they learn, the more they realize there is to learn. Whereas science traditionally tends to be very much a case of, well, this is how that is. This is the box that this fits into, and ironically, then of course those sorts of things are slowly disproven over a period of generations, and as is the case with most things, even the speed of light, for example, and time and space and all the things that seem constant and are being shown very rapidly to not be. And that's a whole different conversation, which you can get Neil deGrasse Tyson on for, not me. But it's just fascinating how that's the one part of science that seems to be building a meaningful bridge with the spiritual. In fact, the Dalai Lama is quite a follower of quantum physics, and
is he really?
Yeah, he's written a couple of books about the connection between spirituality and quantum physics, because it's I just find it really quite meaningful that it's the element of science, it's the area or the discipline within science that not only is the one that's closest to building the bridges between the scientific and the spiritual, but is the one that is more than prepared to say, the more we uncover, the more we realise we don't know.
Yes, I'm totally in agreement with that, Dan. I think there's so much we don't know, and in fact, I don't know anything. Knowing and believing is two different things. I was once, I saw a lot of wise sages and holy people, and that on my travels, and I was once sitting with one of them, and there was a lady there, and she was an astrophysicist. And she was really trying to be sort of, she was very intelligent. But he was saying to her, how many moons are there? How many this? How many this? And she was reading it off. And it went on for 10 minutes. Very knowledgeable. At the end of it, he said to her, so what do you know? And it was so shocking. She said, I don't know anything. And he said, so what are you doing? And she said, I don't know what I'm doing. And she gave up her job because the absurdity of the whole thing of, I think I know it, but actually I don't know anything. And she gave it up and lived a completely different life, a more sort of natural life, farm owners and everything. Because I think, when you have one of those moments where suddenly you just think, what the hell am I doing? As you said, you can't unknow it. You know it then. You've had that light, that moment of light.
Yeah, and I guess this is kind of teetering on the edge of controversial, but there's another great quote, and I have a feeling it might be Mother Teresa, it might be Gandhi as well. But it's along the lines of a life not spent in service to others is a life not worth living.
Yeah.
And I think that the key thing is, when it comes to those kind of profound moments in life, those moments of realization, and the one you just described about the woman who gave up astrophysicist work and suddenly realized the pointlessness of it. And I'm not for 1 second suggesting it's pointless, of course, because I'm sure
for her it was.
Incredible discovery has been made. But the point is, if it's pointless to her, it's absolutely pointless. If she suddenly reaches a point, even if it happens overnight, in the blink of an eye, with a question like, what do you know? Or if it takes a decade to evolve in her, it doesn't make any difference. If she gets to a point where she feels this is pointless, this is meaningless now, and that's what happened to me. It's a whole different category. It happened in a different way. It just happened through the slow evolution of the continual growth of my passion for animals and my need, absolute need. It's not a desire, it's a need to satisfy this drive I have, this fire that burns very, very fiercely on a constant basis, which leaves me feeling completely like I'm wasting my time if I'm not making a difference.
Yeah,
and not just I think it's to a healthy extent, in the sense that I know I have to take downtime for myself at times, but I can't do a lot of that kind of. I can't just sit around and do nothing. But when I know that I could be writing a film that maybe will plant a seed and spread a message in a meaningful way to relating to animal welfare or something, or that I could be supporting one of the charities or involved in, as per the broadcast that I'm doing, my live broadcast series, which is to highlight, showcase.
Tell us about that.
It's a bit like your podcast, as we discussed, in terms of the driving forces behind it, where the need that we both recognise to provide people with hope, with inspiration, with a sense of community, especially in the light of the pandemic and the lockdown, and the fact with the animal welfare community is a lot of really, really sensitive souls, as you can well imagine, and it's precarious. They're fragile people, and I know that because I am one. And it's a lot of these protest marches and events and gatherings outside national embassies to talk about various different issues around the world, and whatever it may be. These events really mean something to a lot of people. That ability to get together with like-minded people, that alone is incredibly cathartic for folks who otherwise feel quite. And again, I get this because I am one of them. It's very easy to feel quite isolated in the world. And I don't actually have a problem with that, because I quite like isolation. I like solitude, and that's lucky me, because the lockdown suits me quite well. But for other people, it's not quite so easy, and those gatherings, those events, protests, wherever they may be, are really important to them. And not just for their own good, but also because the good that they feel that those events serve towards the cause. And rightly or wrongly, some of these things probably, us beating our heads against the wall, standing outside the Japanese embassy and asking them to stop killing dolphins. We'll do it until we're blue in the face, and I will always serve and support those efforts. But whether they make a difference is a whole different story. But we're not going to give up. But the point is, these kinds of events are incredibly important and meaningful to the people who attend them. And with that in mind, when the pandemic hit, and more importantly, as soon as it became apparent just how significant this was going to be across the board, it's true for everybody. People being furloughed, people losing their jobs, businesses collapsing. Obviously, the same is going to happen with charities. And the statistics, when you talk about animal charities, are terrifying. It's an interesting phenomenon that happens. If I focus on animals, there are people who, and I haven't really got the energy to discuss it with them, but there's people that will say, why on earth would you focus on animals when there's human beings suffering? Let's not even go there. But that question gets asked quite a lot. And one of the answers, and there's many, but one of the answers to that question is that at the last count, approximately 1.5% of all charitable donations go to animal charities. 1.5%. So if you think about that, 98.5% of all money that's given to charity is going to human causes. which is, I'm not complaining about that, but I'm saying thank goodness for the few of us who are focused on animals, because it's a tiny minority. And of course, that being the case, and knowing those sorts of statistics, I also know when the charities, of course, all of them are going to take a terrible hit across the board, because who at the moment is able to dip into their pocket and give a charitable donation? Yeah. Some people, of course, still are, and there's some incredibly generous people still doing that. But every charity, just like every business, well, nearly every business, has taken a massive hit because of this. And as soon as I saw that coming to be, I realised that I was going to have to come out of retirement, because I'd actually quit social media. And I felt that it was far more important for me to serve the cause, and the only way I can really do that at this point is social media. There's no other way to do it. So I thought I'm going to come back onto social media. I had a reasonably big following on Facebook, especially, and it's more quality than quantity, because I deliberately collected animal welfare, animal conservation people. So throughout the years, I've hit the limit of 5,000 friends, but I've got more followers, and I've got a professional page as well. And between them, I've got a good few people who care about animals following what I do, and therefore, and this is the key, because it's nothing to do. It's not like I'm not Ricky Gervais with 13 million Twitter followers. I'm a guy who can initiate the ripple effect. That's my strength, is the people around me and the people around them. Without them, I'm nothing. I'm a tiny, tiny, minuscule drop in the ocean. Without those people who follow me on Facebook and who watch the broadcasts and who share my posts, and this week I've been raving about a petition that needs to be signed, which is staggeringly a petition that will require vets to scan dogs that are taken to them to make sure that the person bringing them to the vet is the owner, before they put them to sleep. Because in this country, believe it or not, it's actually happening. People are finding dogs in the street or whatever, or taking a dog to a vet and saying, "Can you put this dog to sleep, please?" And the vet will, without scanning, even if that dog is microchipped. Why would they do that? You tell me. And so unfortunately we're having to enforce this through petition, and the petition's about to hit 100,000, which is great, because that's what sparks a parliamentary debate.
And where can people sign this petition, Dan?
It's right on my Facebook page. It's one of the government petitions. One of the I can actually, if you want me to, I can actually find the web address and send it to you, or I can actually say it.
Maybe we could put it on the episode as well.
That'd be wonderful, because it's live until September.
Yes,
we're about to surpass 100,000, which is the key. But the point I was making about that, and we will absolutely share that petition. Thank you for the opportunity to do so. Yeah. It's called Tuck's Law. It's called Tuck's Law, and it's designed to enforce that vets will need to scan and check for not just the owner, but the rescue backup. So this is for rescue dogs in particular, who've already been through hell, and then subsequently being put to sleep in vast numbers. You'd be astonished. And
but they could. Are they taking dogs that are, you mean, on the streets?
No. It's a dog that would perhaps someone has taken a dog from a rescue, can't handle it, takes the dog to a vet and says, "I want you to put this dog to sleep," and the vet will do so.
God.
Without scanning the microchip, without verifying, because the rescue will be part of this petition is to say that the rescue will then be on the microchip as well. So if the owner isn't prepared to look after the dog, the rescue will take the dog back and rehome it. But the vets aren't even scanning at all. So what's also happening is people are taking dogs in if they find a lost dog, and maybe trying to look after it for a few weeks, and then realising that they're out of their depth and taking it to a vet and saying, "Here, can you put this dog to sleep?" And the vets are doing it because they're not obliged to scan them. And you wouldn't think you'd have to enforce that, with a profession whose life is dedicated to making, to helping animals. But that's the reality. But it comes down to things like that, where social media is so powerful, and I'm able to push that out onto Twitter and Facebook, and thanks to the people, and relatively very small number of people who follow me, but they will jump into action because of who they are, not because of the quantity, the quality of those people will always share that petition, and they'll always shout about it themselves, and they'll always
share it. I will share it on the podcast.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I will share it also on my sites and everything. And
thank you.
You know, so hopefully as many people can sign that as possible.
I'd be so grateful, thank you. I know that the people who created that petition will also be eternally grateful for that, because
definitely we'll put it together.
Well, you know, it's like once we get past 100,000, which I think we'll do in the next day or two, then of course we've done the job in the sense that the debate will take place in Parliament, and that's all we can hope for. However, the thing that occurs to me is, given what this petition demands, and given that we have something, I think if I'm not mistaken, it's 10 million dogs in this country. So 10 million people or more. I think maybe it's 6 million and 4 million cats, so it's 10 million in total. But how is this petition not already up in the millions? I'm sure it's only because people haven't seen it, because anyone who's seen it would be immediately, they'd be like, of course we'll sign it. And all of that comes back around full circle to the fact that I have my wonderful social media following to thank for the fact that I'm able to, as I say, create this ripple effect, or leverage, I should say, this ripple effect thanks to them and their extended contacts and so on, and which of course is the ripple effect in itself. And it's that made me think I need to create a broadcast, and the broadcast is actually it's called Food for Thought Live. So the documentary I'm making is called Food for Thought, and that explores the global vegan phenomenon and the driving forces behind it. And it will be hopefully released in the next couple of months or 3. Perhaps that's a bit ambitious given the situation we're in, but certainly we're close to finished. And then in the midst of this pandemic, because that's kind of put everything on hiatus, I thought, well, what I can do is create a series of live broadcasts, which, as I say, is called Food for Thought Live. And what that does, and the whole purpose of it from the very beginning, was to give those charities that are struggling, that we talked about, a spotlight, to shine that light on the people who are really, really doing the work, who are still out there. It doesn't matter what's happening in the world, it doesn't matter how many donations they are or aren't getting, they're still out there protecting the animals. The Born Free Foundation, for example, we had the incredible, inimitable Virginia McKenna on, and we also had Will Travers, her son, who was also a co-founder along with his father, Virginia's late husband, Bill Travers, who were the 3 co-founders of the Born Free Foundation. We had Will on as well on a separate episode. I mean, they just talked so knowledgeably and eloquently and passionately about all of the causes. And right now, it's essential that they have that platform, and the more the better. For all of these folks. And I know that you've very kindly tuned in on my last episode on Sunday with Rory Young from Chengeta Wildlife, who's an absolute
amazing
frontline hero. He's a frontline hero who's putting himself between the bad guys with guns and bullets and the elephants that he's protecting, literally putting himself between and taking fire and losing men. You know, they lose rangers. Whether it's to gunfire or improvised explosive devices, which are more like something you'd expect to find in a war zone. And essentially they are in a war zone.
They are, aren't they, actually?
They are, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. He operates in some of the most dangerous places on earth, bar none. Mali, Central African Republic, some of the most Democratic Republic of Congo, incredibly dangerous places. And so I felt that it was absolutely imperative, the very least I can do, and this is why, going all the way back to your beautiful introduction, this is why I really mean it when I say, I'm very grateful for your words, but I'm incredibly humbled by it, because I know the real heroes, because my job is to shine a light on them. I'm doing what I can, but goodness me, if we have people like Virginia, who's dedicated 36 years of her life to the betterment of the world for animals, and we have Rory Young, who's, as I say, taking bullets, literally taking gunfire to protect elephants and other animals in various parts of the world, and others too. I mean, I've had 24 episodes now. All of them are heroes, all of them in their own way. Eduardo Gonçalves, who's the founder of the campaign to ban trophy hunting. And, you know, the trophy hunting community is out to get him, and they even, you know, came after me because of the fact that I had him on as a guest. And all these incredible heroes who are literally putting themselves in harm's way to make the world a better place for animals, who, of course, they'll never... They're not going to get paid for this. They're not going to get rewarded for it. They're not going to get even a thank you from the animals. They do it because of the goodness in their hearts, the passion that they're filled with, and the compassion they have for these animals, and they're the best of people. And the very least I can do is to give them a platform. And all I'm doing is switching on a camera and speaking, or more importantly, giving them the platform to speak. So there's nothing heroic about that. It's just without those people, without those real heroes, I have no show. I've got no series. There's nothing to talk about. It's them. It's all about them.
I know, and I understand what you're saying, Dan. But you know, and you're very humble, I have to say. You know, but you have to take the credit as well, and because it's well deserved. Because you are, in effect, you are a bridge. And that is equally important, because how would we know about these things? How would the world know if it wasn't for you? If you weren't doing what you were doing and shining your light, how would anyone know?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm enormously appreciative of what you're saying, and I'll tell you one of the things that all of my guests have said, whose humility knows no bounds, all of them. I mean, they're incredible people, and all of them have said it's a team effort. And Rory included, my last guest, and Virginia and Will and everyone else that we've had on the show, all of them say the same thing, and they say, without the people around me, this falls flat. I can't do what I do. We would achieve nothing. And so I understand it is a team effort, but there are those people in the team. And I said this to Rory on Sunday as we closed the episode. I said, you know, it is a team effort, absolutely, and I get that. And it's crucial that we all play our part. And I really do feel that that's the key thing for all of us. I don't care whether you're a web designer, an accountant, an actor, a soldier, or anything else. We all can contribute something meaningful, as well as whatever we do to make a living and, you know, buy a house and a BMW, or whatever it is we're attempting to achieve. We can also contribute to the betterment of the world. And but what I tried to reiterate to Rory, who was being so humble about the whole thing and saying, you know, it's not me. He was basically saying what I'm saying, but about the people around him. But doesn't change the fact that he is a guy who, there's a big difference between the contribution he makes to the team and the contribution someone like I make, albeit that we all play a crucial part.
Yes.
I wouldn't swap with him on most days. There's days where I would, but most days I wouldn't dream, I wouldn't dare. And we are so grateful for the likes of him and the likes of Virginia, who with her grace and it's just exuding compassion throughout generations, still inspiring, even to this day, at the age of 89, inspiring new generations to care about animals. And you know, these people are just they're different world, they're different level of hero, and it's such a privilege to know them even. And what's been incredible is the fact that the willingness they have, without one exception, without one single exception, everyone I've asked onto the broadcast has said yes.
Oh.
And
that's a credit
to
you, Dan.
So humbling and so incredible, and it really does underline that team effort thing that you're talking about. But just the privilege of knowing these people, even never mind having them on as guests and being able to showcase what they do. But you know, it's just been so beautiful because all of the guests have shared their journey. It's a bit like you start your conversations with how did this all start for you, and I try to give people a bit of context in the exact same way, and we'll get right into the nitty gritty of what they do and how they do it and why and stuff. And I like to understand how it became that for them, and of course with someone like Virginia McKenna, it's an absolutely incredible and widely known story from the film Born Free, and it's an incredible story to hear from her directly. It was just an amazing episode, and what's been beautiful about it is that sense of community that it has engendered and created or maintained, albeit in a different way. But that animal conservation community, a lot of the people that I'd see at protests would be the people who are tuning in every week, and the people who are sharing comments about how emotional they're finding it to hear these stories, and how inspiring and empowering and just exactly what we wanted to achieve with it. Because you've got to keep these people focused on the objective, which is to make the world a better place for animals. And at this point, I think we're all facing challenges today that they're absolutely unprecedented. I know that's the word of the moment, unprecedented, but it is. We've never been through anything like this in peacetime. So for most of us, other than those of us who were alive during World War II, of which I'm not one, we've never experienced anything like this, and probably never will again. And so it's profoundly significant in all of our lives, and I think it's bringing out the best and the worst in people, and that what all we can do. And this is why I'm so deeply appreciative of you doing what you do, and so honoured to be invited to be on your podcast. Is that all we can do is try, as we've discussed, just keep shining the light. We cannot, in darkness, cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. And here we are trying to shine light on more light. People who give hope and inspiration. And I think it's a very worthy endeavour and an important part of a collective effort.
Yes, and it is a collective effort, and like we were saying before, it's like a tribe of people, but the tribe can become bigger and bigger, so that every part of humanity, in some way, we are connected, but we can be touched by all of this and what you're doing and what your team is doing. I believe everyone has their, infinite reason for being here on this planet. There's a secret that everyone holds within themselves. And if we, as human beings, can tap into that, we can not only help each other, we can help all the other kingdoms, and live in unity as much as we can.
I think that's beautifully put, and I couldn't agree with you more. And I feel like it's really it makes me reflect on something that I frequently think about and try to articulate as best I can, which is the incredible reality that we live in, and more so now, in the last 10 or 15 years with social media, ironically, more so because of it than ever before in history. We could literally, everything could change overnight. Not even overnight, in the blink of an eye.
Yes.
In the blink of an eye, everything could change, because everything that's happening, all of the darkness we're talking about, all of the challenges all of the issues that I try to address with my animal welfare and conservation work, all of the conscious awakenings that need to take place for people to become more compassionate towards their neighbours, kinder towards the environment, and towards animals and each other, and for themselves. All of the things everything we can talk about. In the blink of an eye, in the space of time it takes to have a thought, could change instantaneously.
Yes.
Because it's a choice. All of it's a human choice. It's people choosing to do a certain thing, to live in a certain way. And they could choose not to, or they could choose to change. They could choose to be better, the better version of themselves. They could choose to grow, evolve. They could choose peace over war. They could choose love over fear or hate, or all of it's a choice. And interestingly enough, herd mentality is a very well-known and powerful thing. And that's why I mentioned social media, because more so now than ever, everything could change in the blink of an eye. One tweet from the right person that resonates and talk about ripple effects, that could change things overnight, literally. And does. It sometimes does. Sometimes it's a slightly slower process. It's a petition. It's a movement. It's the David Attenborough and his mention of plastic pollution. And all of a sudden, everyone's thinking about single-use plastics. And the recycling thing took a couple of decades to happen. My generation came through learning about the importance of recycling. We're just starting to wake up to it, and so that's a slow burn. But these things are happening all the time, and it's just about when they drop and how fast they drop. But everything could drop. Everything could happen. Yes. Everything could change. And the crazy thing about it is that we have in the palm of our hand, literally, by which I mean our phones, we in the palm of our hand have the ability to change everything and choose to take selfies instead.
I know. Or of your dinner.
of your dinner and to also moan about the train being late. But I honestly believe that in terms of a conscious shift, so social media has the potential to be the catalyst that changes everything for the good, but it can be used poorly or just misused completely, and that's what unfortunately we're seeing because of the human condition. People, as you just said, people are much more inclined to take a photograph of their dinner or a gym selfie or a pout or whatever it may be to portray this image of themselves that they've, of course, are deriving all their self-esteem from, which is why it's just back to ego. They're just satisfying that need. Yeah. And meanwhile, it could be, for example, that everybody would and it would take about a minute if everybody could just say, "Oh my goodness, look, there's this petition to say that dogs can't just be killed by vets without the vet checking first." Who wouldn't, other than a psychopath, who wouldn't sign that? And as you said quite rightly, it's not that people don't care; it's that they don't know about that. Most people would, even if they. I put a tweet out this morning that said, if you have a dog, or in fact, if you know someone who has a dog, in fact, if you even know what a dog is and have ever seen a dog, you need to sign this petition. Yeah. Because when you rationalise it, there's not one normal, sane person that wouldn't sign this petition to save the lives of innocent dogs. Why wouldn't they? Of course they would. They just haven't seen it, and that's because people they're not using it for that. But it's that tool is right there in the palm of our hands, and it's free. It's free. It doesn't cost us anything to make the world a better place. We just get to do it, but that's not what people are focused on. And that's the part where we have to keep doing what we do. And I'm sure, like me, even if you had a crystal ball, and part of me gets the sense that you probably somewhat do have a crystal ball. You seem to know a lot about. You knew a lot about me anyway.
That's another story for another day.
Absolutely. I think like me, if you could see that in the future, whatever strides, whatever progress we're trying to make, if you could see in the future that you failed, I don't think you'd change anything. I don't think you'd hang your boots up. I think you'd continue to fight. I know for a fact if someone said to me, I hate to tell you this, dude, here's a crystal ball. This is your future. The animals still get it in their ear, and nothing changes, and actually it gets worse. All that would do is make me fight harder for the rest of my life. Yes. Not because I think I can change the future, but because on principle, I know I'm shining the light in the darkness, and I'm not going to stop under any circumstances. Even if I know it's futile, I'm never going to stop.
But there's always hope, Dan, and I don't think it ever is futile. And someone said to me a famous quote by Jesus, actually, and I never understood it, and it was when I was young. And they said to me, "Do you know what Jesus said?" And I said, "No." And apparently he had said, "Even if you know the world is going to end tomorrow, plant a tree."
Yeah.
And it's the act of planting. But, we have these phones, we have technology. But one of the most important things that we forget is that we have ourselves. And we are far more powerful than we could ever imagine. If only we would turn the power inside and then emanate that outwards towards humanity and, animals and the plants and our planet.
It's beautifully put, and it articulates far better than I did the exact point about the choice we all have. That's a choice that could be taken for each individual to just be gentle to themselves, the world, everyone around them. Simple. Yeah. Be nice. You could literally, you could fix the world's problems with 2 words and 6 letters in total. Just be nice. Yeah. Just be nice. Be nice.
Respectful. But you know what, Dan? I realised this, and I'm still realising this, because I'm no sort of guru or no saint, but unless we are kind to ourselves, firstly, it begins with us. Unless we're kind to ourselves, unless we really respect our own heart, our own soul, we can never respect anybody else. It's impossible.
Or get respect from anybody else.
No,
you're absolutely right.
It starts with us.
It's a crucial element, and we've a bit of a theme for us tonight has been quoting other great people who say it better than I certainly do. And Buddha, one of my favourite quotes is, "If your compassion doesn't include yourself, then it's incomplete."
I know that one. I love that one as well.
It's perfect, and it's absolutely true. And it's exactly what you're saying, which is self-care is essential, and especially now, because this is brutal right now. There's lots of people are suffering in ways that they can't even comprehend, and lots, as I'm sure you and I are on the same page about the collective consciousness and the power of that, and the collective conscience right now is obviously taking a bit of a battering. Very divided nations like our own and the United States, in the midst of a time where arguably we need to come together more than ever. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because there's this phenomenon that often happens in the face of a disaster. You see the most beautiful acts of kindness and community and selflessness in the face of things like earthquakes and tsunamis, and it brings out the best in people. Even minor things like heavy snowfall, and then suddenly the neighbours are shoveling the yard for each other. They've never even spoken before, but they're shoveling the front path for a woman who lives next door who's a bit doddery, or whatever it may be. And right now, we're probably seeing, again, other than wartime, which is a whole different dynamic and energy anyway, but right now we could be more than ever coming together as a species.
Yeah.
And but we're seeing a lot of divisiveness, a lot of divided people, and I just think it makes the point is, as you've said, and as Buddha said, you've got to be kind to yourself to get through all this, and we've got to keep shining the light. But it starts with us. It starts with ourselves, and because we talked about this before we were recording, the fact that if we don't take care of ourselves, we're not going to be any use to anyone or anything, including our cause that we're fighting for. Will serve no purpose.
And it comes back to your pendulum, which always reminds me of the equilibrium. It's like the spirit level. There's a point in every pendulum. It has to swing on something. But that point, or a compass point, in fact, that has to be firmly rooted in the ground. There has to be a certain rooting to the earth, which, for example, is our ego, because that's connected to the earth. That deals with things such as, I don't know, hunger and lust and this and desire to reproduce and all sorts of things like that can get very complicated in life. And then we have this ethereal sense of ourselves, which is the soul. And each part of that has to be imbalanced, because if one is pulling, everything in life is either, as they say, pulling or pushing. And we have to find the middle. And we are that middle. This is us as human beings. We are the point of the compass. We are the equilibrium.
Yeah, it's a really lovely way to visualize it as well. I think it gives you the visual of what you just described actually provides some grounding. It's a nice, it's kind of a visual affirmation that I think it's no coincidence you're saying that to me, because I think it's exactly the kind of thing I need to hear. Because I like anybody else, I have my days where I struggle with it. It's challenging.
Yeah,
we all do, and in order to be of use, of service to whatever it is that we're aiming to serve or to achieve, in my case the animals, and I've got, again, it's another beautiful quote, and in fact a beautiful painting that a friend of mine gave me when I mentioned this quote to her as being a fan favourite of mine, which really resonates deeply with me. And I'm looking at the painting that she gave me. Quite an incredible serendipitous moment where, and this is an artist I recommend everybody seeking out. Her name is Emily Lamb, and she's incredible. She's connected to another world, and it's quite obvious in her art and words that she speaks and writes with her posts and her art. She's actually the granddaughter of David Shepherd, who was the founder of the David Shepherd Wildlife Foundation, and he was, of course, a great artist who dedicated his life, much like Virginia McKenna. In fact, he dedicated his life and his profession, which was art, to give back to animals. And the David Shepherd Wildlife Foundation is an incredible charity that does unbelievable work for species around the world, but quite heavily focused on elephants, but very much not only elephants. Emily, his granddaughter, is an incredibly gifted artist, and she's well worth a Google. You will be astonished by her artwork. It's just so incredible. And what you have to do is she's one of those artists that you'll look at it initially and think, oh, it's a lion, and then and there's a Maasai woman. Oh, and there's a sea eagle, and look over there's a leopard, and then and then suddenly you realise the whole thing is it's absolutely astonishing art. And she, who I love dearly, has become a very, very dear friend of mine recently, and we had a conversation similar to the one you and I are having about all matters spiritual and so forth. And I mentioned this quote that means so much to me, which is, dare to reach into the darkness and pull someone into the light.
Oh.
And she sent me an incredible painting that she had already done, almost based on that phrase, which is this incredible, I'm looking at it right now, I wish I could describe it. So it's kind of abstract. Half of the canvas is dark and half of it is light, and in each there's a figure and the hands reaching through. And it was just the most incredible, and it struck me as, what an incredible gesture from her to give that to me.
How beautiful is that? How
beautiful, and how beautiful is the quote as well.
Oh. Dare
to reach into the darkness and pull someone into the light, because that's what we have to do.
I love
more
that.
than ever right now.
Oh,
right now,
goodness.
There are more people than ever people who were in the light a couple of months ago are currently in darkness, and they need support, and so do we. So we'll find maybe not as persistently, but we'll have dark days where we could do with a hand of friendship coming from the light and all those good things. That's what we have to do, and that's what it feels to me like. That's what this situation globally that we're in right now, that's what it's offering us. A friend of mine said to me at the beginning of the pandemic, I think this is going to facilitate the conscious shift that we so desperately need. And I wish I believed that. I wish that was correct. I wish it was the case, but I didn't think it was the case. What I felt was going to happen, and I feel has happened, and we're seeing it in no small measure, is that the situation hasn't forced anything, but what it has done is it's put us all at a crossroads. It's not even a crossroads. There's infinite directions we can go in, but basically we have choice. It's putting us in a position of being able to choose. And it's, I guess, easier to think of it as a crossroads. And my concern, my fear was that the people who were on a path towards, you know, whatever it may be, there's negative greed, lack of compassion, apathy, probably the worst culprit of them all. People who were on a dark path would stay on the dark path. People who are on the right path, the light path, would stay on that path, but people would go about that path more enthusiastically than before, and that's what I'm seeing. And that would explain things like all the destruction we're seeing in terms of, you know, the kind we've never seen before, where people suddenly, you know, masses of people descend on a beach and leave 12 tons of rubbish behind, which is just astonishing selfishness and carelessness and thoughtlessness, and it's just bizarre to me. But as well as that, we're seeing incredible acts of beauty and kindness and altruism and compassion, and those are the ones that we I think we need to focus on, and me included. You know, as per this conversation, you can hear that I'm not unaware of the darkness, and I'll go there. I'll go there. I need to be conscious of not staying there. If we get into those sorts of mindsets or conversations, and especially, I think it's a responsibility we have in a forum like this, where people are listening and they could easily tune in and think, "Oh God, yeah, actually, things are pretty bad." Well, yeah, they are, but don't forget the pendulum, and
yes.
and so it's a gift. It's not different rules if it's, you know, on a global level or just on an individual level. It's the same pendulum, it's the same principles, the same concepts, and this could be us just hitting rock bottom as a species, and we're about to push off and go further up into the light than we've ever been before because of this. Because of all the difficulty, because of all the adversity that people are facing, the challenges and the struggles and difficulty. If because of those things, we can retrospectively look back in a month, a year, or a decade from now, and we see that we live in a more beautiful, caring, compassionate, considerate, kind society and world, then the history books will soon refer to the pandemic as being the best thing that ever happened to the human race. And that's just an example, but that's life, right? That's the choice we have with everything that's happening in life, including the big things like the pandemic or the small things that happen to us on a day-to-day basis.
Every moment is a crossroads, in a way.
Every moment.
Every moment is a decision. As you said, you were talking about the phone, that we have this powerful thing in our hands. But imagine the power that we have to make that choice, as you said. Every single moment of our life, we decide what we want to do.
Yeah.
How
Absolutely.
empowering is that?
It's incredibly empowering, and I think it's the empowerment that people I want to say that they crave, but I don't think they even. I think the world does such a good job of making them think. The conditioning is so powerful that I don't think people crave that empowerment. I don't think they crave that freedom because they don't even recognize it. They don't see it as an option. So people in jobs they're not crazy about aren't craving. Some of them are, but most of them aren't craving liberation from that, and the joy of finding their passion and fulfilling it or trying it. Even it doesn't even have to work, and it would be a better life than as again Jim Carrey's dad said, you can fail at something you don't want to do. And so absolutely, every moment's a choice, and all the great thought leaders and thinkers and gurus said this. It's hilarious in a way how I've seen this in my own life, where I can go 45, nearly 50 years and go and think, oh right, the gurus, when they said that, I get it now. And you think, well, that's why for 2, 3, 5,000 years, whatever it may be, their quotes have survived and are still used. But it's just, we just catch up. And I'm terrible at that. I'll suddenly be like, oh, right, yeah, that's amazing, that's brilliant.
Mm.
And it was always brilliant. I just wasn't ready to. I wasn't ready to learn it, and that's that again. Another great. I shouldn't be throwing these quotes around without being able to attribute them to those who actually said them. But I don't know who said this one, but I think it may have been Eckhart. But when the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
Was it Lao Tzu?
Yeah, there you go.
I don't know. I'm just guessing that.
Could easily have been. That's what I mean. I should know these things.
It's the wisdom behind it that's important.
Yeah, and it kind of just underlines the fact that, and a teacher doesn't necessarily come in the form of a person. It could be a poster. It could be a piece of music. It could be a film. It could be anything. It could be a vague familiarity you sense in someone else that you think, I'm inspired by that. I'm going to take a leaf out of their book, or anything. And it could be the teacher, and I just feel like it's exactly that point you're making, that we're always at the crossroads. There's always a choice that can be made, and it can. And the thing that, because maybe it's not always as obvious as, well, there's light or dark, there's right or wrong, there's good or bad. It's not always that clear. Sometimes it is, but it's not always that clear. And when it's not, I just use I have a crystal which I hold in my hand, which I associate. I've got various crystals which I'm sure that people who are into crystals would be.
I love crystals.
So you'd probably be outraged. I have a crystal that I just like the color of it represents love and compassion for me, or one of them represents focus, or one of them represents tranquility, and I'll just hold them. One of them, in particular, selenium, I think, or selenite. It's beautiful.
The white one.
White crystal, yeah. And it's what I associate with my higher self. And it's the one when I'm looking for assistance in a decision, I just always revert to the same question, which is which one serves me, helps me towards becoming a better version of myself than I am today. And that's how I make a decision if it's not abundantly clear which way I should go. Because what else can we do?
Yes, what else can we do? Because ultimately, if we could get to the rawness of that question, what is it that I need to do to get to the real me? Because the real me is the one that can live a life of joy and abundance. Because the suffering is, I believe, and I'm no guru, as you say, but I think the suffering for me personally would be not to follow my life's vocation. That would be the greatest suffering and the greatest punishment for myself.
That resonates deeply with me. I think I can wholeheartedly agree with you on that, and it does feel very much like a case of. We talked earlier about authenticity. It's not honouring that authentic version of you that is there. It's there and eternally patient, waiting for you to realise it and to live it. And as you say, I suppose the challenge is even knowing it exists. Never mind finding that, but authentic. But I think we live in a world where people look outside of themselves for the answer to everything, and you've alluded to this beautifully tonight a couple of times, that the answers all lie within. It's not in the palm of our hand in a phone at all. It's in our stillness. It's in our groundedness and centeredness and silence, and that's so easy to lose sight of, especially in a world that's driving you constantly to distract yourself, to buy stuff, to watch something, to go somewhere, do something. It's constant, and it's increasingly difficult to recognise the value and the importance of going within. The answers are all within, and still comes back round to why you asked about self-care. My solace, my solitude, and my haven is nature, because that's where I can just disconnect. I can be still, and I think it's an interesting word, disconnect, because I think that's the problem. We've become so disassociated or disconnected from our authentic selves, and this kind of, ironically, it talks to the fact that we've got this idea. Even people who are on a spiritual path, even seekers like us, can easily feel like, in fact, that word is a good example, but I'm talking about seeking something, which suggests something outside of ourselves more than inside. But of course, you can seek something inside too. But it's actually like, if you look at it from the perspective of a child, I don't believe that a child is born with anger or rage or racism or hatred or intolerance or all the things that make the world an ugly place. I think they're born inherently with compassion and kindness and tolerance. And if you put a young child in front of a puppy, hardly likely they're going to think, oh, that would make a nice hat.
Yes.
Or something. They're not going to think that. They're not, I could, if I could get a female, I could breed them and sell them. They're not going to think that. They're just going to think, oh my God, I want to love it. I just want to love it. And you see children being given puppies and they'll cry tears of pure joy.
Yes.
It's one of the most beautiful things you can ever see. And this, one of my favorite words is tabula rasa.
What does that mean?
Tabula rasa is the state of consciousness of a newborn being that before it's polluted and conditioned and affected in any way so it's pure spiritual consciousness. When it's first arrived in its most pure state.
How beautiful. Wow.
Beautiful, isn't it?
Oh,
Tabula rasa.
I love it.
Right. And if you imagine tabula rasa, doesn't need to be taught anything. And what I'm getting around to saying is, when it comes to things like authenticity, when it comes to our true purpose, our highest self, the best version of ourselves, we are it. But it's been clouded and polluted and layered over and over again with things that cover it and mask it. But the point is, it's in there. It's not outside. It's in there. It's not about going out and learning something we didn't know. It's about remembering something that's inherent in us. All of these things: compassion, kindness, goodness, stillness, silence, all of it. It's in us. And it's actually stripping away those layers of reality TV, shopping, job, you name it, all the superficiality of life. It's right. It's underneath. It's underneath all that stuff, and it doesn't even mean you have to give up that stuff. It just means you just start to search within. Just start to search underneath it all for the deeper meaning. But of course, you've got to want to. You've got to want to. There's no point in. There's no point in again. If the teacher isn't, if the student isn't ready, the teacher won't appear. And again, the teacher could be stillness and meditation, could be nature. They're there all along. Just if the student's not ready, they won't see it.
And that's part of the whole spiritual journey, because I know people have this connotation, don't they, Dan, where, when you mention spirituality, sometimes people have completely the wrong impression about it, and they will think it's sort of incense and this and this and this. And partly, yes, it is. I mean, in any case, but we are spiritual beings having that famous quote, you'll know, having a human experience.
Yeah, I love that so much, and it's just like your point you made earlier on about the being that point at which the pendulum has to be grounded. What you just described there is also one of those things that we're spiritual beings having a human experience. That's one of those phrases that can center me instantly.
Yes, was it C.S. Lewis that said that? I can't remember, but it's something that totally, everything then suddenly makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
If you know, as you said, we know who we are. We know why we are here. We just need a reminder.
We need to remember.
Yes.
We need to. It's about remembering and getting back to our true purpose, or our true authentic self.
And what's the magic ingredient?
I think. I mean, it's a hard one to quantify in.
Do you know what I think
a simple way? But I think silence and stillness is the magic ingredient above all else. Really, wherever you find that, I think it's because anything else, to an extent, is distraction. Now, and I'm not saying everything else, because there are things that will help. So for example, I find it really helps me to get into a meditative state if I use music, as I've said. But maybe I'm actually holding myself back, and maybe sitting in pure silence would be far more profoundly helpful to my spiritual journey.
You could try that. I've tried. Andrea Bocelli. He wrote a book, and it was The Music of Silence, and I totally understand that, because I have a friend, and he said to me, "You know what you should do? Every day, you should say to yourself, 'I really love you.'" And I said, "Should I?" And he said, "Yes." I said, "I do love me." And he said, "No, you should tell yourself, because sometimes the soul and the heart and the body forget." So I did this little exercise, and I do it every day now. And actually, it's made a huge difference, Dan, because I say, "I love you. Don't worry. I do love you." And it's sort of very comforting, but the realization and the presence of pure love. And I think
and unconditional love.
Yes, that.
Yeah, and that's probably the easiest way. Interesting, isn't it? That's fascinating. I've never thought about it that way before until you said it. But that's probably the simplest way to practice and experience unconditional love. And crucially important. I agree. I think it's really important. It's probably something that many of us, myself included, could benefit from and should benefit from, because it's gosh, I mean, aren't we harsh on ourselves? I speak to myself in a way I'd never speak to anybody.
Yes, me too. When there is nothing. I heard this quote: "There is no one that can be more cruel to us than ourselves."
Right. I mean, I caught myself doing it the other day. I dropped something, or I can't remember what it was. I turned around and, I don't know, I had a watering can in my hand or something, and I turned around and clipped the tripod that my camera was standing on and spilled some water, and I went, "Idiot." And I thought, oh my God, there's not one person on this planet that I would say that to. If I saw them do that, that I would, I might say it tongue in cheek, in jest, but I didn't say it tongue in cheek. I said it spitefully. I said, "Oh, idiot." I thought, who's that? That's horrible. What a nasty piece of work. I wouldn't speak to somebody else like that. And I spoke to myself like that.
Are you going to try the love experiment?
You bet I am. Starting today.
Yes, I've been doing it now for about 2 months, and I do feel, actually, Dan, completely different. When something, so for example, I'm in pain or I'm feeling bad, I just say to myself, "It's okay. We're going to get through this, and I love you, and I respect you." And every single atom, you will really feel this, I'm sure. Every single atom in your body, in your soul, begins to rejoice, because it's being recognized for the beauty that it is.
What an absolutely beautiful concept and idea and way to put it, and what a beautiful suggestion as well. And it made me immediately think of an incredible experiment that was quite famous, that you're probably aware of, Dr. Emoto from Japan who was the guy that did the experiment with the water and the crystals.
Ah, yes, about the water having a memory.
Well, about the water being affected by emotion and even words. So they had 2 bottles of water, and on one bottle they had the label with the word hate, and on one of them they had the label saying love.
Yes.
And then they would freeze the water and take photographs of the ice crystals, and it was absolutely staggering. There's a book. You can actually see a lot of the images online free of charge anyway. But it's absolutely fascinating. And also, if anybody's aware of the incredible film, which actually, it's a film that goes some way to talking about, very, very well actually, talking about the concept I spoke of earlier, the bridge between science and spirituality with quantum physics. It's a film called What the Bleep Do We Know?
Mm-hmm.
And it's absolutely incredible. It's an incredible film, especially for somebody like yourself on a spiritual path. It's an extraordinary film, which really brilliantly demonstrates what I'm talking about with regards to the bridge between. You see exactly why there's an element of quantum physics that is well into the spiritual camp, because it's inexplicable in extreme ways. And in that film, the Dr. Emoto's work features, and they'll show, you see some great examples of it where they had people shouting at and being nasty to water, and they had some Zen Buddhist monks blessing some water, and again, one of them, the crystal structure of that water that was shouted at looks like an oil spill, and the one that the Buddhist monks blessed, the Zen Buddhist monks, looks like the most beautiful snowflakes you've ever seen in your life. And the reason I mention this is because we human beings are somewhere in the region of 75 to 90% water.
Yes. Yeah.
So what you're saying about, you tell yourself you love you, and every atom in your being changes, that would make absolutely perfect sense. And we can all see that happen. When we're talking to someone about something that makes them feel angry or resentful or whatever, maybe jealous, anything negative, and their entire being changes. And then you say, hey, tell me about your rescue puppy. And
I'm smiling even as you say that now.
There you go.
Just because you said rescue puppy.
Complete shift. It's a complete shift. It's a complete shift, and it's very obvious when you think about it. And we're whatever it is, 70, 80, 90% water. It's kind of a no-brainer, really, when you think of it like that.
How beautiful! And our chat has been absolutely beautiful, and I'm so grateful, really, Dan, for you coming on today. It's amazing. You're amazing. I love your work. I love what you do and what you stand for. And I could talk to you for 50,000 years, really. As you know, we've already spoken for 4,000.
Easily.
We've got to, sadly, it's not goodbye, it's farewell until we meet again. But as we come to the end of the show, I would like to ask you, I always ask my guests this, what words of wisdom would you give to people in these times that have helped you through your life, in a paragraph?
Well, what a wonderful question to end on. And there's so many answers to that question. And of course, the idea is to give, as you say, a paragraph, a way,
something like
a nice succinct way. Yeah, I mean, I think what I would say, especially in this time of strangeness, shall we say, challenge, struggle, and just the profound nature of the times and the world we live in. I think that one of the easy situations or habits to fall into is that position of victim, and that I do honestly believe, as somewhat counterintuitive as it may feel, certainly as per that conversation we had about ego, doing a good job of getting its claws in and making you think, you want to go a certain way when perhaps definitely the best thing for you wouldn't be. In this current time, I think the single best way that we can serve ourselves is to ask how we can serve others. I really do. And I think, as I say, it might sound counterintuitive, but I think that
I love that.
You can't give something you don't already have. So if you're in a dark place, if you're feeling a victim of circumstance, and you could spend your whole time focusing on how you're going to straighten things out for yourself. And of course, we live in a world where we have to function and operate and logistically continue, and I get that. But aside from that, and next to that, perhaps alongside it in parallel, you can also we can always find it in ourselves to give something to someone or something else. And in order to do that, you have to be in a position of having. You have to have something to give it, whether that's love, support, compassion, time, whatever it may be. And it's just like that other great statement, quote, phrase, that be in an attitude of gratitude.
Yeah.
And it changes everything. And I believe that giving will make you feel everything you are giving, I think you'll feel has been given to you as well, because you can't give it without having it.
It's true. It's that, again, I know we're one for quotes, us two, but all that I gave, I have.
That's beautiful. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And more than ever now, I think people need that, and I wish that for everybody, and I hope they find it. And Mimi, I have to say, I'm so grateful to you for having me on, and this conversation has been a beautiful experience for me to hear your thoughts and insights, and to just be able to share with you in this forum. It's just been beautiful, and I feel very, very honoured and humbled and grateful in the extreme to have been invited, and it's been absolutely beautiful to talk to you. And I love everything you stand for as well, and what you're doing, and thank you for being you.
Oh, that's so sweet. And likewise, really, Dan. It's rare to find people that are sort of swinging on a star next to yours and, catching that glimpse of that light. And that's really what I think you are really. You are shining the light, and the honour really is all mine. Thank you so much for coming on. And please come back again whenever you like, and keep us updated with all the things that you're doing and all the projects that you're doing. And, it's been wonderful. A beautiful soul, you really are. And for all those listeners out there, if you want to get in contact with Dan and have a look at all his work, where can they do that, Dan?
They can on Twitter and Instagram. My name is Dan 7/10, and that's 710THS. And the reason for that, funny enough, this wasn't rehearsed, is because the planet is 7/10 water.
Oh my goodness, that's amazing.
And my production company is called 7/10 Motion Pictures, because I've always loved water. And of course, we just ended on talking about the fact that we humans are 7/10 or more water. So Dan 710THS on Twitter and Instagram, and on Facebook. If you just type Dan Richardson, I think I'll come up pretty high up the list, and I'll you'll certainly find me under Dan Richardson Actor, and I've got a verified page, but I also have a personal page where actually I do more of my work, including the live broadcasts. But
is that
it would be wonderful to connect with everybody. Yes, it is. I'm at the limit of friends on Facebook, I'm afraid, but we can. I'm public. In other words, you can follow and comment and interact in any way you like, and I would love very much, especially given the nature of your podcast, any of the listeners would be very welcome, and it would be an absolute pleasure and an honour to have you follow along and become part of that ripple effect we talked about.
Beautiful. I love it. And on YouTube as well, isn't it?
YouTube is actually, it's called Food for Thought.
Food for Thought, okay.
I think there's quite a few YouTube channel's called Food for Thought, but our channel is very new, and you're probably your best bet is to find it via my Facebook page, because we always share it on the Facebook page.
Okay. And you're going to send me the link, aren't you? So I can put it in the episode details, and then I will share it on my pages and everything as well.
I will indeed, and I will be sending you the petition link.
Yes, and anything else, any other links you want me to put up there, I will do the same.
Oh, that's so kind of you. Thank you. It's such a pleasure and an honour, and as you know, for all of your wonderful listeners, thank you for sticking with us for as long as you have, and spread the love.
Yes, spread the love. Thank you, and lots of love to all of you, and lots of love to you, Dan.
And to you, Mimi, lots of love. Thank you so much.
Then. Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Dan Richardson, extraordinary, exemplary. You know, what people out there do for others really gives you faith in humanity again. Although sometimes bittersweet about all the things that go on out there in the world, there are always some people trying to help. Thank you so much for joining me today. Until next time, take care and lots of love.
Thank you for listening to Secrets for an Inspirational Life, brought to you by your host, Mimi Novic. Please remember to subscribe to the podcast, and see you in the next episode. For more information about Mimi Novic and her books, music, and inspirational work, take a look at her website, www.miminovic.co.uk.